In 1968, Paul Ehrlich and his wife Anne published The Population Bomb on the connection between human population, resource exploitation, and the environment. In 1971, Nicolae Georgescu-Roegen, the father of ecologic economics, the Romanian mathematician, statistician, and economist, publishes the seminal work The Entropy Law and the Economic Process, in which he argues that natural resources are irreversibly degraded when put to use in economic activity. In 1972, Club of Rome publishes the controversial Limits to Growth, which predicts dire consequences if growth is not slowed. Northern countries criticize the report for not including technological solutions. Southern countries are incensed because it advocates abandonment of economic development. First published in 1973, Small is Beautiful brought Schumacher's critiques of Western economics to a wider audience during the 1973 energy crisis and emergence of globalization. In 1985, climate change is predicted for the first time during the meeting in Austria of the World Meteorological Society. The UNEP and the International Council of Scientific Unions reports on the buildup of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. In 1987, the Montreal Protocol of Substances that Deplete the Ozone Layer is adopted. In 1987, Our Common Future, the Brundtland Report, waves together social, economic, cultural, and environmental issues and global solutions. It popularizes the term sustainable development. The United Nations Conference on Environment and Development is held in Rio de Janeiro. Agreements are reached on the Agenda 21, the Rio Declaration. Two Rio Conventions are open for signature, the Convention on Biological Diversity and the Framework Convention on Climate Change. El Niño happens once every 5 years or so, taking the rain away from Southeast Asia and Australia, causing drought and fire, and dumping it on the west coast of the Americas, Peru and Ecuador, causing devastation, floods, and mudslides. That year, Oiko's founders spent Christmas in the Guayas Delta in Ecuador, while drafting for the World Bank an environmental management plan for the Delta in Guayaquil. El Niño shows up and sends a first warning. We were direct witnesses of the colossal devastation, and the first idea to create Oiko is born. On the 22nd of October 1998, we find ourselves in San Pedro Sula, Honduras, working on a water and sanitation project for the World Bank. Hurricane Mitch hits the coast of Central America, and we are again witnesses of the catastrophic flooding from the slow motion of the storm, causing more than 25,000 people dead and 45 billion worth of damage. La Niña caused flooding so severe that it displaced 200 million people in China, submerged half of the land mass of Bangladesh, and spurred on the North Atlantic hurricane season, where the deadliest hurricane in history occurred. Oiko's team decides to relocate to Honduras to help and to assimilate the replicable lessons from the disaster. Posted in Tegucigalpa, we work on a USAID post-disaster reconstruction project, and we decided to set the foundations of an institution to help understand and prevent the impacts of climate change. In the year 2000, the largest ever gathering of world leaders agreed to a set of time-bound and measurable goals for combating poverty, hunger, disease, illiteracy, environmental degradation, and discrimination against women to be achieved by the year 2015. In the year 2003, the legal constitution and foundation of Oikologica takes place in La Coruña, Spain. In 2004, Oikologica wins the first bidding competition and is appointed to design the Communications and Technology Center network for public service delivery in the Mosquitia, Honduras, funded by the Canadian International Development Agency. In 2005, the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment is released. 1,300 experts from 95 countries provide scientific information concerning the consequences of ecosystem change for human well-being. Oiko celebrates New Year's Day at the Corcovado National Park in Costa Rica, the only remaining old-growth wet forest on the Pacific coast, with 13 major ecosystems including lowland rainforest, highland cloud forest, Jolillo palm forest, and mangrove swamps, as well as coastal marine and beach habitats. With the support of the Inter-American Development Bank, our project resulted in the first sustainable development strategy for the Golfito Peninsula, home to the Costa Rica's shyest and most endangered inhabitants, like bird tapirs, jaguars, scarlet macaws, harpy eagles, red-backed squirrel monkeys, and white-lipped peccaries. This documentary is perhaps the most influential talk on climate ever, alerting the public to an increasing planetary emergency due to global warming. Al Gore won the Nobel Peace Prize with a few slide presentations and some flip chart illustrations. In 2006, Oiko opens a new office in Madrid and starts a fruitful collaboration with the consulting firm AECOM, coordinating together the European Union research project Aldiagnos. Oiko supports the National Happiness Commission of the Royal Kingdom of Bhutan through the Global Climate Change Alliance to develop the first country climate readiness assessment. The Copenhagen climate negotiations are dashed, and the momentum begins to shift toward national and regional efforts to reduce emission, and Oiko is lean and nimble to support Bhutan and Lesotho. In 2010, the Economics of Ecosystem and Biodiversity final report calls for wider recognition of nature's contribution to human livelihoods, health, security, and culture by decision makers. By the year 2011, the world population reaches 7 billion and is increasingly interconnected. 1/3 of those have internet access. 80% have mobile phones. Increasing the population by 1 billion took only 12 years. 50 years after Silent Spring, 40 years after Stockholm, and 20 years after the Earth Summit, the global community reconvenes to secure agreement on greening world economies through a range of smart measures for clean energy, decent jobs, and more sustainable and fair use of resources. Oiko travels to East Kalimantan, Borneo, to support the Ministry of Research and Technology of Indonesia with an assessment of sustainable and renewable energy potential through palm oil and timber byproducts as biomass. In 2014, Oiko engages with the Global Climate Change Alliance in an association to develop the two most relevant climate strategies in small island development states, the Republics of Seychelles and Mauritius archipelagos, where we use ecosystem-based adaptation to prepare for the rapidly changing climate. Oiko travels to Bhutan to work with the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry of the Royal Kingdom of Bhutan to support the formulation of the National Renewable and Natural Resources Strategy. The result was the National Determined Contributions and the communication to the UNFCCC Secretariat when Bhutan was presented to the COP21 as the first carbon-neutral country in the world. Oiko contributes to the design of a network of climate centers in vulnerable ACP countries to ensure access to the Copernicus Climate Change Service, to provide society with information about the past, present, and future of climate in vulnerable countries from Africa, Caribbean, and the Pacific. Oiko works with the Global Framework for Climate Service of the WMO and UMSAT to prioritize most needed climate investments in climate-vulnerable countries, to ensure availability of Earth observation science, satellite information, and science-based evidence for policymaking to anticipate and prevent the impacts of climate change. We start the year 2018 in the remote island of Timor-Leste. Oiko conducts a climate risk evaluation of the Dili Ainaro Road development corridor, aiming to strengthen the resilience of communities to climate-induced disasters such as floods and landslides. We travel to the Caribbean for the application of an innovative valuation exercise in the Northeast Illanola region. We conducted a comprehensive analysis on the economic worth of natural resources within a uniquely pristine biodiverse region on the island of St. Lucia, mainly to make reasonable conservation decisions about the future. To scale up the Switch Off Pollution project, Oiko defined the climate technological options to reduce and mitigate coal consumption in poorly insulated homes and small businesses from Ulaanbaatar's Ger district by exploring different avenues for climate financing, involving more actors and companies, and the diversification of energy products. In 2021, Oiko diagnosed the entire dairy value chain, analyzing its different components and understanding its holistic logic, as well as the different energy gaps present for an assessment of the corresponding technological needs. We focused on the balance between men, women, and youth through an effective integration to reduce inequalities in the implementation area. To help local stakeholders understand and appreciate the role and importance of climate change scenarios in coastal planning and management, Oiko, through a series of training workshops, improved the processes of climate-relevant data acquisition, storage, analysis, access, and transfer to help manage the sometimes catastrophic climate change-related events. At the Oiko team, we continue to work every day so that a greener and more sustainable future is always accessible to the last mile.